Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Meredith.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right, we are lucky and blessed to have Meredith Land with us this morning. Meredith and I worked together years ago in Charleston, South Carolina, where she was an anchor and reporter there, and she catapulted herself into the stratosphere to Dallas and has been incredibly successful there. So she has much wisdom and knowledge to share with you guys this morning about her path. And of course, every path is different, but I think that if you listen to Meredith and ask her some questions about how she managed it and what she sees in the industry now, I think there's a lot of great information here for you all in terms of craft, learning, and career. And so, Meredith, if you want to unmute and just say hello and give us a little 30-second bio about yourself, that'd be great.
Let's see. Can you hear me?
You're unmuted. We can hear you now.
Okay. Gosh, I've done so many of these Zoom calls since the pandemic started. We've become pros, haven't we, in communicating this way. But I'm so happy to be with you, and thank you for your time. I don't want to waste a second of it because I know it's precious. But yes, we go way back. You know, Gene was my boss in Charleston, South Carolina, my first market, which actually happened to be my hometown. And he was tough. He was not an easy boss, but you know what? He brought out the best in me and all of us, and really kind of united a newsroom. And it was a great experience. I was sad to leave, but anyway, thanks. Do you want me to just kind of talk about my journey?
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your journey. I think there are definitely wonderful lessons to be learned there, and
awesome
to get to know you a little bit.
And just wave if this is starting to get boring, and we can do the Q&A. So I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, and I went to school, finished, went to Clemson University. I always loved to read, and I always loved to write. I mean, even from the time I was little, I was writing in a journal and reading a bunch. And so I knew that I wanted to be an English major and a journalism minor. But the truth is, I was a really shy person. I wanted to be behind the scenes. My real dream was to be like a travel magazine writer. That sounded really glamorous and exciting to me, but TV was not something that I would remotely consider. I took a public speaking course at Clemson, and I barely got a B-. I mean, I would have like a panic attack when I had to get in front of this class and give a speech. It gives me hives thinking about it. So I really didn't think that was my thing. But we got closer to senior year, and I realized I need to figure out how I'm going to make this work into a job, because my parents had said, you know, we helped you out with this college education, but now you're out of the nest and good luck. So I interned. My mom called the station in Charleston, South Carolina, the NBC station, WCBD, where I work with Gene. And she said, because I was on a study abroad program. And she said, I mean, my daughter, is there an internship? Is there something that she could do behind the scenes? And so I applied for this internship. I got it. And it was unpaid. I lived back at my parents' house for the summer. And I thought, I'll just learn how to write for TV. You know, this is never going to be an on-camera situation. And the anchor at the time, Nina Sossaman, had young children and, you know, was really pretty swamped. She was at this point in her career where she had climbed the ladder. She had made it to the top. And she kind of took me under her wing, and she said, look, I walk in here late just about every day. I'm trying to hold my kids together and keep everybody happy. If you would go out and shoot stories for me with a photographer, log them, write them, hand me the script and I'll voice it. And you can do all my anchor packages all summer. So it's like, here I could kind of help her out, but I could also learn on the job. And so, I was enamored with her. I thought she was just everything. You know, I'd grown up watching her. So I was just like her little poodle, you know, just doing whatever she needed. So all summer I did that, and I loved it. I loved walking in every day, and just every day was different. You didn't know what your assignment would be. You didn't know where you'd end up. It could change. And just telling stories and learning how to tell stories was so exciting for me. at the end of that summer, I was sad to leave. I went back to Clemson. I started putting a tape together, even though I wasn't a broadcast major. I knew that I could they had taught me at Channel 2, just put a tape together. Like, it doesn't really matter. You know, you can just send it everywhere. So I would send it everywhere. And I mean, nobody called. I got one call from Hagerstown, Maryland. And I went up there and I guess I bombed the interview. I just must have been a complete disaster. And I remember the guy that interviewed me, the news director, he was headed to get back in TV. So he was like not interested in me at all. So I didn't get the job. They didn't even call me back. And then, so I basically graduated from Clemson with no job and begged my parents to move in with them. They said that I could for a short period of time. And I called Channel 2 and I said, I'll do anything. Like, I'll write, you know, you don't have to pay me much. Like, I just need to get my foot in the door, and I'll eventually get a job in a smaller market and whatever. So they were like, sure, you know, you were a good soldier. You did all Nina's work last summer. So I started writing kind of just behind the scenes, and a hurricane came through, Hurricane Floyd. It was a Category 5 hurricane. And keep in mind, I'd grown up on the coast. And so I'd been through Hurricane Hugo as a child. Hurricanes were not really that big of a deal to me, right? You evacuate, you get out, you move on, everything ends up being fine. And so a lot of the reporters decided, you know, I'm not going to stay here and risk my life to cover this storm. I'm out of here. And so they started evacuating and not willing to stay to cover this massive storm. And I was like, I mean, I'll stay. Need some help. And so I kind of raised my hand, and they desperately needed some bodies to cover it. And so they gave me an earpiece, a live van, and a photographer. And they said, you know, we will let you cover traffic in and out of Charleston, which, you know, I-26, there's one way in and one way out of Charleston. And just, you know, go along the highway and talk to people as they're evacuating, because the traffic's starting to build up. So I'd go like from car to car and interview people. How long you been here? And people would cuss, and I knew you couldn't do that on TV, so you'd run to the next car. But in the end, what happened was the hurricane missed Charleston, but the story ended up being the massive evacuation debacle. The governor of South Carolina flew over while we were all out there in the hot sun and decided not to reverse the lane. So he should have reversed both lanes out of the peninsula so that we could have gotten out quicker. The story ended up being people stuck for hours on this interstate, elderly people sick, you know, using the restroom on the side. I mean, it was just deplorable conditions. And that was kind of the story of Floyd for Charleston. And there I was in the middle of it, you know, some idiot, just barely out of college gal. And the local, I tell you this just to make you laugh. The local radio stations called me Hurricane Hottie. And at the time, I just wanted to be so serious. I wanted to be Barbara Walters, you know, I was just humiliated. But anyway, the general manager called me in and he said, "You're awful right now." Bill Evans was his name. And I was like, and he was like, "But one day you'll be good. And I'm going to give you a shot. So you have a reporter job here." I mean, I was like, I have chills thinking about it. I was over the moon. I was like, this is going to be great, you know? So I was the education reporter for a few years, well, about a year. And then the morning anchor had a baby and chose to leave the job behind and be with her baby. And so I think this general manager kind of just got a kick out of me because he could see the grit and the willingness to raise my hand and willingness to do whatever it was. If it was a weekend assignment, weekend morning, you know, I was always willing to do it. And so he called me back in and he said, "You're awful right now, but I really think you might be good one day. Like, so let's do some tests on this morning set." So I tested. I'd never looked at the teleprompter before. None of that. It was terrifying. And we just did a few tests and he just kind of let me go. This is a small market, right? Market 106, I believe it is. It was when I was there. And it was just me and a weather guy. And we did this show for hours. And they really just kind of let me be who I was. And I think that was the magic and why it did so well, was didn't have a whole lot of people messing with me or telling me to be this way or, lose this accent, which I was always trying to do because I was Southern. But, just be yourself. And I think that was the biggest gift that station gave me. And the weather guy and I just had such a great time and such excellent banter and, authentic relationship that we ended up being really number one after a while, which shocked us. We were just like, fake it till you make it. I mean, we didn't have any of the resources of the other stations. So that's how I got my start. And I stayed there for 4 years. And then an agent who was coming through Charleston on vacation, Ken Lindner, who is out of Los Angeles, saw me on the broadcast. I guess he was just with his family. And he too said, "You're awful right now, but one day you'll be good." It's kind of a theme. And so I went out to Los Angeles with my dad and barely was making any money. I was making $20,000 a year at the station. I couldn't afford to live in an apartment, so I just begged my parents for my childhood bed. I'm sure they were so annoyed because I would come in late and, that market was the most fun, I'll just say. But so we went out to Los Angeles and he signed me and I was just so starstruck. He had Matt Lauer. I know it's probably a faux pas now, but at the time it was a big deal. He had Lauer and Lester Holt and Ann Curry and all the big people, some entertainment folks. I really just felt so special. And so at the end of my contract at Channel 2 in Charleston, he got me an interview in Salt Lake City. And it was for their morning show, which, to go from 106 to what is Salt Lake City? It was a big jump, right? It's sort of a nice medium market. And Ken said, you want to go from the small market to the medium market because that medium market, especially Salt Lake, is a real launch pad for the top 10, the top 5. And so just let's go. And they flew me out. I had never been there before. And I didn't know. I didn't know what to expect. And so I went and it was, what is it? The one that's owned by the
KLS,
Mormon Church?
Right, KLS.
Yes. And everybody there looked like me. It's kind of spooky, right? And I had never spent a whole lot of time out west and I don't know. I didn't love it. Like I felt like I couldn't breathe because of the altitude. And I did a test on the set with a guy for the morning show and they really liked me, but I don't know. It didn't feel right. I don't know. And I knew I needed to just suck it up and do it. So I got back and I told Ken, I was like, I don't want to go there. Like, I guess I was scared. I'd been home in my hometown and he was like, we have no other options. You have to go. And I was like, this business is so brutal, right? And so I was like, well, let me think. Let me just pray on it, And I just really, I don't know. It was it was a gut feeling. And so as I'm thinking about it, my time is running out. The station in Dallas, Texas, called the NBC owned and operated station, which is the one I'm at now, KXAS. Susan Tully, who works at Nexstar, was my news director for years and a great mentor. She called and just for the weekend morning show. I mean, and I think Ken was like, gosh, you were right to come to sit this one out. So she flew me out to Dallas and I came and interviewed for the weekend mornings. And this is Market 5. It was a big jump for me from 106. I was the youngest person in the newsroom. I was just like, fake it till you make it. I mean, I was just like, I've got to just fool these people into thinking like I know what I'm doing. So she hired me weekend mornings, and then I would report 3 days a week. And I think I just decided I'm not as good as these folks here. A lot of people have been here for a long time. They probably don't know how, they're probably wondering how I got here. Like, what did I do to deserve this? And I definitely got a lot of that. Like, one photographer, can I be a little off color? Asked me who I slept with to get this job.
Oh, my Lord.
Like my second day on the job. This was before me too. But anyway, I just decided like hard work wins the day, right? And so that was my MO. I just let every manager know, like, space shuttle blows up, I'm here, that was a big story at the time, or whatever, you call me, like I'm the one. And so I kind of just like, that was my deal. It was like I had my hand raised and was willing to do whatever. And so I got to cover a lot of big stories early on, just as a young reporter. And I was not ready for this market at all. But I feel like I just kind of, I don't know, just like forged ahead, and was willing to do the most. And from weekend mornings, I quickly moved like 6 months to weekend evenings. And again, a lot of this business is luck, it's timing and it's how you play it, right? And so I did the weekend evenings for a while, and about a year, I guess, a year and a half. And then they moved me to the weekday 5 o'clock news, because they wanted me to report on the 10. So the deal was I would anchor the 5 p.m. and then I would be live at 10, because they felt like they really wanted me at 10 in the field. That's the big show here. That's where the advertisers put all their money. And so they felt like I was a good live reporter. And they always put me in the B block. I was never the lead, but I was just like a little sparkle in the B block, I guess. I don't know. But I just really form relationships here, and I think the biggest thing I did was I asked people to mentor me, people who weren't like me. I wanted a different perspective on stories. I think that's so important, especially today in the climate we're in, to not only, go for it, have your hand raised, but understand your community. Like, reach into other communities that you don't know anything about, and ask somebody that you look up to in your newsroom to just have coffee, once a quarter, somebody that's not like you, and gain perspective. And it really helps you tell stories when you have that. But also be tough, stand your ground. I was raised Southern, so, you're kind of just supposed to be like, yes, ma'am, and submissive, and, oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, always apologizing. And I had to really push through that, because you don't want to be so bold that you're polarizing, but you want to be compassionate. But you need to stand your ground too in your journey. And I also had a really hard time speaking up in meetings. I still do. I don't know. I just get nervous. I get nervous in meetings. I mean, I'm the main anchor here in Dallas. I've been at this station for 15 years, and I'm still like, I don't know. I'm better like in front of a TV camera, I think, than I am in person. And I get nervous sometimes still when I have to speak on a stage, because you can see all the faces in the audience, whereas like it's just me and like 4 studio cameras and a few friends, and a teleprompter in my normal everyday thing. So I would just say, I don't know. I think you asked me 3 things. So have your hand raised, which I feel like I covered. The mentor, have a mentor that's not like you. And then in turn, when you get to where you're going, mentor somebody, that isn't like you. And you'll find that people want to be with someone familiar. So like, cute girl started as a reporter, and she looks just like me, and she walks like me, and she, has got the fake blonde hair like me, and she wants to be me. And that's fine. There's time for that. But for me, it's like, I'm looking for people more, for me, more diverse folks to mentor and spend time with. So I think we can all grow and then innovate. And we'll talk about this, I think one of the questions was find a way to be valuable to your station, your organization, outside of like just the job description. And so, and it's not that, it is kind of hard. Fear will hold you back. And I'm kind of old for Instagram, but I got on, and I don't know if you've checked out my feed, but I started a news feed in my stories, and it's really taken off because I found that we all kind of park it on social media, right? We all do. I can't believe how much my friends and my husband sits on Instagram all day long. And so I thought, well, this is a space where I can add some value in like quick little bites, no sound. And so if you go look at my stories, it's like kind of just the facts. I think people today are craving news that's not politicized. Like I sit here at night and I'm like, what do we watch? I just want to know what happened today. And it's like all so politicized. CNN is one way, and then of course Fox is another, and just give me the facts. And so I started this with just the facts, and it really grew in the pandemic because I would just give the numbers, like the daily numbers and the hospitalizations, and I had a guy volunteered to make the graphs, and then now with the movement of Black Lives Matter, that's been huge too, of people wanting to know more and have more resources and see where things are headed. So at first it was a lot more extra work, but now I'm kind of in the rhythm of it. And I always push to my station. So I always try to swipe up to, if you want to read more, swipe up to NBC-DFW. And if we don't have the article, I try and find another NBC property just because they pay me still. I feel like I need to give them that, and they're awesome to me. So innovating, finding different ways to push the product and be valuable, I think is huge, especially today when we don't know where the TV business is going. And Jean probably is well-versed, more well-versed in that than I am. So that is kind of it. I mean, at some point in the mix, I went to Afghanistan, which I think that's one of the questions, but well, I guess I didn't really say that I got the main job. I did the 5 o'clock for a while, and I reported on the 10, and it was such hard work. I was so tired. And then, gosh, they came to me, I'm trying to think how long ago, that was almost 10 years ago. And the longtime anchor, who I really admired, she'd been in this market for like 30 years. They came to me and said, we just think that it's time to make a change at 10. I hope you don't hear all my little alerts going off. And we want you to have the 10 o'clock news. And I was like, called my agent, Ken, same guy. And I said, I am like absolutely not ready for this. Let's give it a few more years. I'm not going to do this. And he was like, you're an idiot. You need to just take it and just keep that mentality of working hard and being a good newsroom citizen and just, go for it. Sometimes opportunities arise when we're not ready for them. I was not ready for this one. But again, just fake it till you make it, go for it, and believe in yourself and know that, they see something in you maybe that you don't know exists. And so we did it, and we did well for, a long, long time, and still at it. So it's been a great ride. My parents laugh because, I was such a shy child, even all the way through high school, really much of college. This was really not, to be a career talker was just not in the cards for me at all. But the people I've met, the stories I've told, it's been so wonderful. And who knows what's next, but I'm grateful. I've tried to stay humble throughout, and still learning a lot right now with the climate that we're in, and people in my newsroom teaching me and just learning to listen. I don't know everything, and I have a lot to learn. We all do. And I think having that mentality wins the day, right? Humility and growth and learning and listening. And that's a huge part of, I think, my success on air is when you listen. So it's like, I'll intro a package. If you really listen to it, you know, a lot of people that I work with aren't listening. They're looking at their hair, they're in the mirror, they're, you know, whatever they're doing on their phone. And I'm guilty of that too. But like, if you listen to the content, you're better because you react out of that piece, you know? And there are even times where like, it's so sad. There's something so sad. It's just like, you can just see it on my face in a really authentic way. So you're not acting, you know, it's like, you're really listening to the content and listening to your co-anchor. You know, I have a lot of co-anchors that don't listen to me. They're probably like, shut up. But I'd really try to listen to them and respect them. And so when they finish their read, it's like, it's a smooth transition out of their read to mine because you can tell it's like conversations. You authentically are listening and then you're transitioning to the next thing. And sometimes that's an awkward one, right? It can be like a horrible story to like a good one. And then you just have to find a way to finesse your way into the next read. But if you're not listening, then it's just choppy and it's just like you're on two different pages. So I don't know. I hope that
Wonderful.
was interesting. And any questions are welcome.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks for being so candid and so open and sharing in that way. I learned a lot too, and we already know each other. But yeah, you know, something that intrigues me, and I'm sure you find this with young people entering the business, the idea that you touched on several times with, I'm not ready for this. I'm not worthy of this. I'm not ready for this. But then challenging yourself to accept that opportunity as it's presented and forge ahead. I think there's something to be said there for a group of young people that some of them will be graduating in December, and all of us at that age, I think of myself having my own doubts. You know, what could you say to these folks if you can, you know, recall that kernel of some of those instances in your life where you said, well, no, I'm not ready for this yet, but you went ahead and took the step and had faith and were able to forge ahead.
And you will, I mean, the door will slam so many times in your face. It did mine. And you're not cut out for every job and every shop. And you have to know that it's meant to be. Like that Hagerstown, Maryland job that I interviewed for, they gave me a history test that I probably bombed. I felt like such an idiot, you know? I mean, they didn't even call me back to say I didn't get the job. And I could have just maybe given up there and been like, this business is just not for me, you know? But it's the cool thing about this business is it is for everybody. You know, I was not an A student. I was a pretty average gal. But I think just what I see in young reporters and people trying to make their way up is the ones that do the best, the ones that are set up for success are the ones that are just working hard and they're reaching out to people like me, you know, hey, help me. I need contacts. I just got here. You know, a gal got here from Raleigh a year ago, Candace, and we meet all the time. And, you know, for me, just her approach and her eagerness is like, I will give her my entire Rolodex. There's an old word for you. And I've taken her to lunch with people in different communities and given her contacts. And then I have other people that I come, you know, it's like I'd walk by their computer and they're on Facebook or whatever, and they're just kind of mailing it in, less likely to help them. Right. But I don't know. It's really hard. And I remember senior year of college, I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, what if I don't get a job? It was the most stressful time, I think, of your life. One of them, just not knowing where your path will lead. But take the job, you know, even if it's not, I really thought I'm pretty good. I'll get a reporter job. I mean, I didn't. I took the writing job. And, but again, I had my hand raised, met with the news director, let him know, hey, I have higher aspirations, but this is where I am. And, give me opportunities, you know, even if it's a weekend and I'll work for free, you know, let me go out and put a story together. Even if you don't like my voice, someone else can voice it, but just let me do it, and they did, because you'll find that like not a lot of people are willing to do that. It's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Gene will tell you that.
It is.
A lot of people just want, I remember like my first job just being under my computer. I was a reporter at this point, rewiring the computer in whatever way, and the intern walked by and she was like, I really thought this job was glamorous. And I was like, oh no, it is not glamorous. Yeah, you really have to be willing to do a whole lot of things, but the reward is there when you do. And I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, great. And that idea which you touched on right there is, I think that, there are a lot of wonderful professors and programs out there, but I think that unfortunately a lot of times in learning craft and learning by doing, and then learning theory and media law and things like that, there doesn't seem to be, in my experience, at a lot of schools, enough time put in front of young people like this to give them the reality of really what it is like. And so I find a lot of young people applying to me for their first job, and they fully expect to walk straight out of their senior year into a sideline reporter job at ESPN.
I know.
And so that calibration of expectation, if they don't get a starring role at ESPN first year out of school, they're a failure. That's not how it works. Your story is a wonderful story that I tell these folks here and everyone I speak to on college campuses, your job for job one is not to get the perfect job. Your job for job one is to break in. It's the first step on the ladder. So I think a couple of the questions from people in the class centered around how to, once you've gotten that first job, what are some of the things on your list to leverage that experience so you can create another 2 or 3 rungs on the ladder for yourself and get yourself to a bigger market or a bigger newsroom? Were there some conscious things you had in your head beyond the good citizen, hard work kind of things that you did that you might be able to share? Is there, not to put you on the spot, but is there anything that comes
No, I'm just trying to think. I just remember asking a lot of questions of people that I admired, guys, girls, people who had made it to where I was. I had a mentor in San Francisco, Dan Ashley, who was the main anchor there forever. I think he's still in the air, but he was, we had the same agent, and my agent said, why don't you give Dan a call? Cause he was in Charleston for a long time, and I would ask him questions, and I was so eager to get out of that market. I just wanted to go, I just felt like I had jets on my heels and I wanted to get to the next place. And I remember one day he said, calm down. Like, you'll get to where you're going, but like, enjoy the journey a little bit here, like, I don't know, go date the sports guy. Like you need to have, I didn't, by the way.
Boss.
Stories for other times,
Yeah.
but enjoy the journey. It's not, you can be so ambitious that you don't look back and have those stories, and you want to have that, and you want to grow. But yeah, I think mentorship is the biggest thing in this business. And I mean, it's like, I can really help people. It's like the girl I mentor now, Candace. Not only am I helping her with contacts and helping her grow and looking at her writing and all that, but I'm also kind of an agent in her way with our boss. He's like, how's she doing? And I kind of walk through how, because a lot of times when you're the news director, you have a million things. You've got a budget, you have a million things going on. You can't really always hone in on each person. And so I'm kind of like her little advocate, right, in the newsroom. And I just think I think mentorship is the biggest thing. I really, really do. I didn't really have that much of it in this newsroom. It was sort of a little bit of a cat fight there. I mean, it was just very, very cutthroat with the women when I first got here. And we've tried to create a better culture since then. And I think we have, but
Great.
I don't know. I hope that's
Good.
helpful.
That's good. Yeah. Lainey actually had a specific question about teleprompter. Lainey, you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes. How are you, Miss Land? Thank you so much
Hi.
for taking time to be out here to speak with us. So I know that you're a anchor, and I was wondering, what are some tips that you have to offer us to be more confident while reading the teleprompter, or to make sure we're reading it accurately or not skipping over words?
Do you roll your own?
Excuse me?
Do you roll the teleprompter like manually yourself or somebody else?
Someone else, yes, ma'am.
So
Someone
yeah.
else.
So I always, and there are some anchors in this market that are now rolling their own. They have a little hand, dial on the desk, and they also have, some of them have a foot pedal. Kudos. I don't know how they do that. Like, I can barely walk and talk at the same time. So you're lucky if you have somebody roll it. I always just touch base with that person, because like sometimes it'll roll off the top and you're still trying to say those words, and it's like, and it's unnatural because you're trying to rush because you don't want to miss the next thing. But so rhythm and talking to the person who's rolling it, kind of practicing with them. So go in the booth and let them roll it, and you can kind of talk through it. But it just takes practice more than anything. I mean, at the beginning, I just remember my mom said she would watch, my eyes would just dart from side to side. And it wasn't natural. The more you practice, the better it will be. You kind of just get where, and you just want to connect with the lens so much. You want to connect with the people that are watching at home. And so if you fixate too much on the words, and you aren't telling the story, right? I think that's the biggest piece, is you are reading, right? That's going to be what it is. But you're also storytelling. And when you tell a story, like when you read a book to somebody in your family, someone little maybe, and you're reading it with expression, that's really what you're doing in news without too much drama, right? But each story is different, so you want to tell it differently. And you want to, so you're reading, yes, but you're also telling and relating to the viewer. And I always sort of think my mom and I are really close. So I always, since I started, am like thinking of telling her about each story, because she's a listener and she's supportive. So think about that person who's supportive, and tell them that story, just. And I also think you'll get better, and I'm sure you guys are all very involved in the writing, but the level that I'm at, they all write it for me. I don't really have to do anything, and I can get really lazy. So the more that I'm writing and I'm rewriting the content the way I would say it, the better I am on air. And full disclosure, have weeks where I'm just like mailing it in a little bit, and I could tell the difference in my performance because, when I go in and I tweak that tease one, the way I would say it, it's just better TV, right? It's more relatable. I'm actually in this game instead of just reading it. So all those things, understanding the content, knowing it. And then once you're reading it and relating into that lens, like look into that lens and thinking about the person that you're telling, and tell each story differently. Give it the treatment it deserves. And then it'll be less about reading, right? You're thinking about the story. I hope that's helpful. But it just takes practice, honestly, because it's so scary at first. You're just like, you could have a prompter operator that's just like out to lunch. I mean, when I did the morning show for years, it was like, it would just stop. I think they fell asleep. I'm like, help me out.
That's a great point.
Thank you so much, Ms. Land.
Oh, great question. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, great point. And you made the connection with writing. And what I tell our anchors and reporters here is, you think about presenting as an on-camera skill, but realize that presenting is also connected to, number one, writing. Did you actually write the story, read the story, rewrite the story so you fully understand it, and you've rewritten it, as you pointed out, in the way you would say it, and you also gain a deeper understanding of the story as well. And then secondly, what I always tell folks is breathe. Breath is the fuel for storytelling, especially on camera. And if you tighten up and you don't breathe, then you run out of gas and you cannot tell the story, and your performance suffers.
It's true. And the scariest thing is dead air. Like in the beginning, you're just like, you feel like you have to fill every second. You just, blah, 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 blah. But that's not the way we are, right? Let it breathe. We don't talk that way. Also, there's this like, well, when I got in, you want to be like, you want to be so mature and you want to sound credible. And so you put on this like voice. You're trying to lower your voice. That's important, what we do. But, I kind of had this like weird, like way I talked, like, good evening, I'm Meredith Land. I don't know. And it was not the way I talked. And so I think you have to work through knowing what you sound like, and the audience can tell when you're being you versus just trying to play a part, right? And that's where the magic is, when you can just be yourself authentically telling these stories, professional, right? That's where the viewer's like, I like her, not so much. I mean, you can be relatable to anybody. I mean, so many years of my career, it was like, darken your hair, cut it. You're too blonde, you're too dark. It was just like, I don't think the business is that way anymore. I don't think there's much allowance for it. But I mean, it was just like constant consultants, and we called them insultants. They would come in and just try and change your look and change the way you did everything. And and then bosses that would put me, not Jean, in this box of like, this is who you are on our team, and this is who this person is. But like, I think the business has moved so far beyond that. Like, I think you can be no matter who you are, I think you can be relatable to a lot of people if you find that authenticity in what you do and in your craft. I think that's huge. You can lose yourself. I mean, I've seen so many people lose themselves, talent in this business, just trying to please and trying to be, but like, don't forget who you are, because that's the viewer. It's powerful. The viewer can see it. Don't you think, Jean?
Absolutely. Authenticity. You can't fool anybody.
No.
You can't fool anybody, especially yourself. I mean, you'll know if you're starting to do something and your gut is telling you something and your heart is telling you something, you'll know. You'll be the first one to know. But if you keep doing it and you keep playing something which is not really you, the viewer is going to know it instantly too. As soon as that camera comes on, they're going to know. So trust yourself. Be authentic to your own spirit and your own mission. And number one, respect the people you're telling the stories about and want to be accurate and fair. And if you're respecting those sources and those subjects and you're trying to do right by them, it'll work out in the long run. It'll work out in the long run.
Absolutely. I agree.
A couple of times you touched on a theme of being at a certain point in your confidence and capability, and then realizing, having an awareness on your own and through your people that were advising you of what a next step might be. And this is a theme I try to share, and I don't know if you will recall it, but you and I actually had a conversation years and years ago where we talked about what that next step might be. And I said out loud, you will get an offer to go anchor a weekend somewhere, but you're going to be reporting 3 days a week. And right now, your reporting game is not as strong as your desk game. So what are you going to do to get ready so that when you get to this next place, the 3 days a week you're not on the set, you don't flunk out? And that, you may or may not remember, led us to that Afghanistan trip. You went to the Afghanistan trip. So this idea of realizing that play to your strengths, but be candid with yourself and use that as an opportunity for constant growth. And I heard you say it several times, always be learning, always be asking questions. So that kind of leads me into a question from Sarah, Gray Barr. Sarah, would you mind asking your question about the overseas stuff?
Hi, thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. My question was about overseas reporting, and then specifically, is it a common practice today, or do news stations prefer to just hire stringers? And then also, if you are assigned to go overseas, how do you adapt and learn in like an area where they might not necessarily speak English and you might not speak their language?
Yeah, great question. I still can't believe I went, to tell you the truth. Jean, you'll remember Blair Miller was so jealous. He was one of my colleagues. He was a reporter, and he was such an eager beaver. We are good friends to this day. He's a White House correspondent now, I think, at Fox and DC. Anyway, eager beaver. Gosh, he was so mad. Anyway, what I did to get to go, and I think if you work as a national correspondent, you know, there's that opportunity, but there really isn't a whole lot in local. But in Charleston, we had an Air Force base. And so I started to make contacts that way. We were in Operation Enduring Freedom at the time. And so I would go out and try and do some stories or, you know, kind of say, hey, can I help with this or that? You know, trying to make some contacts. And I said, would you ever, I just pitched it again and again, would you ever take a crew over? And so I think, you know, after a few months, they were kind of like, well, maybe this would be a good thing. And my pitch was, I'm not going to go out on the front lines, right? But I want to see what base life is like for these folks that are based here in Charleston. Their families are in Charleston. They leave on a C-17 for months at a time, and they are in Kandahar, Afghanistan on the U.S. base. Some of them just monitor the generator needle all day. That's their job. Some are cooks. Some go out in tanks in the field. Some, you know, do missions, humanitarian missions. And then you have your special ops that are actually out there, right, on the front lines and doing all the dirty work. So I wanted to see what the base was like. I wanted to tell the stories of the people that are Charlestonians and really interesting just for our community, but also for their families to see. I mean, you say goodbye and you have no idea what it's like. At that time, we had satellite. I'm so old. We had satellite phones, but you know, now I think they FaceTime and all that, but we couldn't do all that then. So I pitched it, and then eventually they said yes, and they sent me and one of our photographers and a newspaper older guy went with us too. And then there was a crew from Charlotte, North Carolina that went. And we went and we flew on a C-17 through the night. And I just remember like all of it was just so new and like shocking to me. These people the troops were young. They were just like kids, right? They're getting on there. You can tell, you can just feel the nervousness and the energy of that. And we all slept on the floor on the C-17. It's just, you know, it's an enormous aircraft. And then we would get, you know, along the way on the trip, we would go in the cockpit. Do they call it the cockpit? And they gave us these like night vision goggles so we could see the way they flew. And we got to tell a million different stories on the way. And then once we got there, we slept in tents. There was a media tent, but we all slept together. And then, but you know, you're right there with the rest of the troops. You're using the same porta potties. You're having breakfast and all the meals with them in the morning. I remember right when I got there, I would just say this for humor's sake, I was just, you know, serious journalist. And I was going to the porta potty and some like cute young troops, these guys walked up and they're like, ma'am, can we ask you a question? And I was like, yes. And they were like, are you one of the Dixie Chicks? I was like, I wish, because a lot of people will come entertain, you know, like they have musicians and like the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders will come entertain overseas just as a nice thing to do. But I was like, yeah, no, I'm trying to be a serious journalist. But no, we just told the stories on the base, and we were able to get off base one day to do a humanitarian mission. And we took MREs, the meals ready to eat, into the field, and we got to see, we went into the villages of Kandahar and saw the beautiful, colorful, you know, robes and dresses that they all wore. And it was really mothers and children. And there was a little bit of a fear at that time. You know, we had all the bulletproof vests and the helmets and all that, but we were kind of part of the mission to give them food and water and and they were grateful. I'll never forget the pictures, and I still have the pictures in my house, and just the faces. It told a different story to what the American people really thought. It was like, when you think of war, right? You're at war, but the troops were doing more than just that. There were a lot of really neat things that went on too. So we told all those stories, and that I grew so much on that trip. And we didn't know when we were getting back. It was kind of like you were at the mercy of the military. I remember we had a flight back through Germany, and then something happened with the special ops. We were getting ready to get on, and we saw this the special ops troops come through, and that is a rough looking bunch. They had been in the mountains. I mean, Lord knows what had been going on with them, right? And they needed the lift to go somewhere else. And so we waited another week to get home, and it was like Christmas. It was like, well, guess I'm not gonna be home this year. But anyway, where was I? We stayed about 3 weeks, and it was eye-opening, because you think it's going to be one thing when you go in, and then it is a completely different thing. You realize all the different jobs that keep that base going, and and they miss their family, and we talked about that a lot, and the sacrifice in what they do. We talked a lot about. So yes, I grew a lot as a reporter thanks to Jean on that trip. And it kind of gave me my wings, to feel like, well, if I can do this, if I can do this, I can surely go to Dallas, Texas, and try to, report on a apartment fire. Just kidding. Or whatever, it is of the day.
You told me when you came back from Dallas, they asked one of the questions they asked you in the interview was, how in the heck did you get into Afghanistan?
I know. I mean, I guess I just begged. I don't know. I just begged. I really wanted the experience. It was so cool. And now, I live in Dallas, obviously, and George W. Bush is here, the president, former president, and First Lady Laura, and I'm friends with them through many stories and things that I'm on her health board. And it's fun to be able to say I was there. And actually, authentically, I think they really want to hear about it. They're like, really? Of course, he was commander-in-chief then. And so it all comes full circle, right? Meeting veterans, too. I do a lot of veteran stories here. They were there, same time I was there. They were so much younger, and a lot of them lost limbs and sacrificed so much. And it's, the more experience you have and the more reporting you do, the more layered you are, right? And you can't expect to just be like a cute little cupcake reading the teleprompter and be layered and have this great experience and wealth of knowledge. It's really just pushing yourself in those spaces that are uncomfortable and going for it and doing it and learning. And you're not going to be perfect. You're just not. You're going to fail, and you're going to look like an idiot. I mean, I had a million live shots where my mom was at home holding her breath. That was awful. But just getting back up and going again, and realizing that the whole journey, there's a reason for it, right? So push yourself into those spaces. And I mean, I don't think I've ever said no to an assignment. I don't think I ever have. I'm just sure, yes, we'll do it, And honestly, in this job, I think the biggest thing I've done is just make contacts in every single community, be the person to say, I'll find out. Even where I am now, I could just mail it in every day and show up, but they know they can call me and say, we call the Bush Center and find out, if the President Bush is going to speak on this issue or that, and they will always, call me back. And doing the charity stuff that means the most to you. Only do the things that you really care about. Don't just do things to check the box. You might do a little bit of that in the beginning, but soul search and be like, what really tugs at my heartstrings? For me, it's child abuse, whatever it is. I remember early on in the career, people were like, now you need to do charity work too. And I was like, I ain't got time for all that. This is enough. But you do grow through that too. And you do make the contacts through that too. And you do become a more compassionate person. And that's an important piece. It's another layer along the way, but I think it's important, but the contacts are huge. always. And I remember in this market, like taking people to lunch on my off time, just constant coffee, making those contacts. And that's so big because every day you're going to have a story idea. And you kind of need to, it's hard in the beginning, but once you have those contacts, you can call and be like, hey, anything happening here? And you're dialed in. It starts to make your job a whole lot easier and you're more credible.
Great. You touched on it earlier, a little bit about your journey and really souping up your Instagram stories. And Mallory, you had a question about social media. Why don't you ask that?
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoy your Instagram stories. I thought that was a really good idea. What are some other unique ways that you've seen people in the field maybe use their social media to share news, or some other ways that you do it with social media?
There is such a push. Thanks for the question. There's such a push now for that, right? We are watching our viewership decline more, and we see people in the social spaces a whole lot more than we did. I would say get the blessing of your station. You don't ever want them to think that you're doing something rogue or that you are looking for a way out. But we're always pushing our reporters on Instagram currently and Twitter. There are all these different spaces, right? So you can wear yourself out. I personally think, and I guess you've seen my Instagram, the stories are such great spaces, and you can save those stories and archive them. You probably know that. But those are great, quick bites, quick little sound bites. And I also find that people don't want a lot of sound in media on their phones because they're at their desk and they don't want their boss to hear them watching a video or listening to somebody. They just kind of want quick little bites. And of course, there are going to be some viral videos you want to see, right? But that was sort of the way I started. It was no audio, just story tiles with information. People are so empowered now to dig and get their own information. They don't wait for a journalist to tell them, right? There's just so many ways to get it. So for me, I just found a way to kind of hone in on just a few little story tiles so that you can wake up and you're like, okay, that's the weather, one tile. Okay, this is what's happening today. Governor for us is speaking at 1. So we'll wait to see what he says. We're probably going to reopen the whole state at 100% here in Texas because that's the way we roll. So they kind of know, it's just makes them smart, right? This is what's happening today. Governor Abbott at 1, and, we'll get those numbers probably from Meredith at 2 or whenever the counties report them, and graphs. And, so I feel like I'm talking in circles.
No.
And honestly, so when I decided my children are getting older and I decided that I was missing everything and I didn't want to be on the 10 o'clock news anymore, which was a huge, huge leap for me because this was the job of a lifetime. I took a woman that I really respect and a good friend to lunch. Her name is Charlotte Jones, and her father owns the Dallas Cowboys. She's the brand manager for them and is a strong, brilliant woman. She works in a man's world and she runs circles around all of them, frankly. So I told her, I said, I just feel like I need to be more present with my children. I never see them. I'm working all the time. I think I'm going to give up the 10. Are you disappointed? Because, we kind of have this female power thing going. She was like, not at all. I think it's fine to lean out for a few years, but as long as you stay sharp and you stay, she's like, I think you need to innovate in a different space. In that absence, my challenge to you is to get on social media where everybody is. You needed to be in that space yesterday and get in it and create. And I said, well, the graphics are going to suck. It's going to, I feel like I'm a main anchor, I should have a real slick looking graphic package. And she's like, no, it's organic. That's what it is. Get in the space, get in today and start talking to the viewers. Put one story tile up, whatever it is, just play in the space. People are pretty forgiving there, right? And eventually so I did. It didn't look so good and it still isn't perfect, but I don't think people really care. I think slick and like corporate looking doesn't really do it in that space. Do you guys? I mean, I kind of liked it. My little sister was like, this is so embarrassing. Like, you're clearly doing all this yourself. Like, aren't you better than this? I was like, no, I think it's actually endearing for people to see, like, oh, she just threw this together. I mean, sometimes I'll like have a spelling error, and that drives me, like, I try not to. People will like call me out on it and like drag me in the DMs. But that's endearing, right? So I interact with people a lot, and they named it. I was like, all right, viewers, followers, I wanted to call it Just the Facts, but I was like, I feel like I should play on my last name, Land. So send me some suggestions. And basically people came up with the landline. But there are other people are so creative out there, way more than I am, and funny. And so engaging with people, I think on social media, you end up gaining a whole lot. And they named the thing for me, and now we have t-shirts, but, don't know if I answered that, but I think her greatest advice was just go for it. Like, just play in the space. It's not going to be perfect. It never will be. But like, that's the endearing piece, and people attached to that.
Thank you so much.
That's wonderful. Well, we're an hour in, and we want to be respectful of your time. It's been great to see you again. I'm so happy for you and your family. So proud of you. And so glad you took the time to share with us today. You want to just take another 30 seconds and wrap up?
Yeah, well, I just appreciate the time so much. And I remember being exactly where you were and how stressful that was. And just knowing that I could do it, but just needing that opportunity and that chance, And so even if it's not the job that you think you deserve or dreamed of, and a lot of my friends had these incredible, I'm going to medical school and all this stuff. And I'm just like this little news poodle trying to like get in the door, but just know and believe that you can do it, and take that lesser job if you have to. I mean, our economy is not great. Just get in the door and work hard, find that mentor, connect with that news director. It is so hard to walk in that news director's office. So hard. Make an appointment, 5 minutes, and just do everything you can. And I tell you what, and Jean knows this, like, that is what they want. They want people who are willing to raise their hand and go above and beyond and work that extra day and not be like, can I get a comp day? Just do it. Just work it, learn through it, do it. You're going to work so hard, but it will be worth it. And you will get to where you're going, and do enjoy the journey. Hook up with the sports guy, whatever you need to do, enjoy the journey, have fun with it. And it's a great ride. And know that you can reach out to me. Just, you have my email address. You can always DM me through Instagram, the Landline News. I never close. So know that you can reach out with any questions. I'd love to help.
Meredith, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. I love seeing you.
I love seeing you too. Be
Thank
blessed.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Luck.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we have remember your videos are due tomorrow at 5, and I think I have 1 or 2 so far. I'll try to get to those today. Video number 2, and just as a quick recap before we sign off here, remember it's the things we've learned in video 1 and 2, which is sequencing, wide, medium, close, natural sound bursts, and then adding 1 or 2 of those sound bites in. And the 2 types of sound bites you're going for from your subject are the narration sound bite to put underneath your video sequence. And those narration sound bites are a description of, here is what I'm doing. So they are the mechanics and the process sound bites. And then you want to include at least 1 sound bite where you show the person talking, and that is the motivation sound bite. This is why I do what I do. And your motivation soundbite, by showing the person's eyes, ears, face, and seeing their expression, the viewer gets a window into the why and the emotion and the motivation for why is this person doing what they're doing. And again, don't think you have to do a half-hour documentary. It's just keep it simple. You've got your sequences, return to your origin, and be disciplined about wide, medium, close, natural sound bursts, and then just say, okay, I have a great sequence of this action. let me shop for a soundbite to put underneath it. I have a good sequence of this action. Let me shop for that soundbite. And then I need to ask the why question in 3 or 4 different ways so I can pick one of the 3 soundbites to use as my motivation soundbite. Sarah, go ahead. I saw you raise your hand.
I'm slightly confused. Is it allowed to be longer than 1 minute, or do you want us to keep it like a minute or less?
If you, I want you to shoot for a minute, but with this one, since you're adding sound in, then I'm not going to really, put a tight rein on 1 minute. But
Okay.
you should not be getting up in the 3-minute range here.
Got you.
So what I'm trying to get you to do is to also recognize, because even now I have reporters that are 25 years in the business, and they do a really strong interview and they fall in love with all those sound bites. So they pick 4 or 5 sound bites and they do an original first draft on their story, and it's 2 minutes and 55 seconds long. And I'm like, I have you down for $1.20. Go back and chop half of that out of your story. If you want to do a 3-minute piece, we'll put it on the web. But the newscast is 30 minutes long, and I got 5 other reporters I got to get in. So, there's a phrase, and you may know it from literature, called "kill your darlings." And what that means is, if you're writing a story and you write a really fluid, poetic sentence, and it's just a beautiful piece of copy, but it doesn't fit the story or propel the plot forward, it's a darling. And although it's a beautiful sentence, you got to kill that darling because it doesn't serve the mission of the story. So
Yes, sir.
be disciplined in killing your darlings.
Thank you.
Mallory, did you raise your hand too?
Yeah, we can discuss it, I guess, through email. I shot you an email about video 3. I work retail, and our whole staff has tested positive for coronavirus.
Oh, wow.
And I'm waiting for my results, and I have a fever.
Okay, good luck with that.
So I was just wondering, like, the best way forward. Do you want me to like use a tripod and be the interviewee myself just to practice like the shots and editing?
If you can, yeah, just you're gonna have to do the best you can, because your first priority needs to be being well and being safe.
Okay.
So let me ask you, do you have a pet?
I do have a pet, yes.
Your pet might be your subject. I don't know. That's just a wild guess. Does your pet do anything funny? Or so you obviously couldn't get a soundbite from your pet, but maybe you could get a soundbite from somebody else in that household who's already been around you and stuff, and they could be, the soundbite about the pet, and that would serve as your soundbite. So again, this is not, you're not in an ideal situation because you're limited at this point, but just do the best you can. And really, I want you to do is have the experience of gathering the sound. So if possible, I prefer that it be someone else beside yourself. But if you use your best judgment, and whatever situation you find yourself in, be well, be safe, and then do the assignment. It's third on the list or lower for priority. Okay.
Right,
I want you to be okay. Yeah, absolutely. And anybody else raising their hand? I'm scrolling through the list of. Okay. Well, I know that Sam has looked over and edited your web bios, and those are up, and you guys are sharing those, so that's wonderful. And he has, I believe, finished the edits on story number 1 and has talked to most of you and or emailed with most of you. And so going forward, just as you have done with your video stories, where you learn a thing or two in exercise 1, and then you keep that as a skill and a set of tools and apply it in number 2, number 3, do the same as you learn things from Sam. He's very complimentary of a lot of your stories, so nice work. Take those specific comments that he's written on your stories and use those as tools to sharpen story 2, 3, 4, and as we go forward. And I think you're going to find that it's like the videos. As you do it a little bit more and you kind of get over that hump of being nervous, once you do it and then rewrite and then do it again, you'll be amazed in the weeks ahead how you make such tremendous progress. And I think you're all very talented. You got a lot of important things to say. And so far, Sam has been excited about looking at your work and providing you the feedback, because there's some good stuff there. So the next step for story number 1, as we talked about a little bit before, is Sam will be preparing a section on the website which highlights that group of stories, which are all about a similar theme, which are COVID disrupted by summer. And so he will set up a page, which then you can send you'll get the link and you can send people to read your story and your classmates' stories. And then as we go along for the next 2 or 3 weeks, there will probably be a like section for each one of those themes. And in light of what we have going on in the country right now with the demonstrations and the tremendous movement forward and call for change, I want you guys to be thinking about 2 or 3 weeks down the road. I don't want you all to, this is a very important story to history, to society, and you all are right on the front end of that. And some of you I know have conversed with me and you're actually active in the movement. And so, that is a wonderful opportunity for you to make your voice be heard and to share that through your work. So after we get through these initial assignments, both the videos and the written web stories, where we're sort of just taking it slowly and learning, I want you to be thinking about, is there something that I want to say about the movement and about what's going on in the country, both in my video story and my web story? And so consider that, because again, like I said, several of you are active in the movement and you've been out there in the streets, and I admire that. And so if there's an opportunity for you to use your voice and your tools and your training with video and with writing to tell that story, especially one that's close to you and involves your peers at this stage in life, I think it's a very, very important thing to do, to tell those stories. But also for you personally as a journalist, it's an opportunity to be there observing history. So again, be careful, be safe, social distancing considerations are there, and you don't want to do anything which is going to put you, in trouble with COVID or in a situation where there's danger. So please be careful. But I'm not telling you to go out into the middle of a riot or a police action. But all I'm saying is there's a ton of stories out there that need to be told right now. And you guys are hardwired into a lot of your peers who have experienced some of this negative, very negative stuff, historical stuff. And if you have a desire, I want you to be just thinking about, do I want to tell that story? Would I like to share that perspective? I think it's incredibly valuable. And so somewhere down the line in a couple of weeks, when you guys start pitching your own stories, please understand that that is something, because we're all living in that right now, this important point in history. Be aware that I want to encourage you guys, should you desire to tell those stories, you have my blessing, and I'm anxious to hear your stories and your perspective and those of your peers. So just know that as we get through the first little, more structured training exercises, we get to a point in the rotation where you're pitching your own ideas. So just think about that, because I think it's an important thing we should be aware of. And should you desire to pursue that, I want to encourage that. That's all we have for today. I think Meredith was awesome. I really learned a lot from her, even though I know her from years ago, and hope you guys got something of value. Please do remember to follow her on social media, take her up on her offer to connect. So send her your contact information, and also please do send her a thank you email by tomorrow morning, if you don't mind. Guys, thanks so much. Be blessed. Look forward to seeing you number 3 videos. Okay.
I have one quick question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So my kind of idea is to kind of use like inside and out. I'm sorry, I have a house phone.
That's okay.
So my ideas kind of go from like inside to outside the house. So what kind of would be your advice? Because I'm kind of thinking like maybe kind of film my mom doing a workout. So some stuff she does indoors, like maybe sit-ups, and then walking outside. So how would you kind of suggest to transition from inside to outside without making it look like a jump cut?
Yeah, you could actually, one way is to use the door opening to get someone outside. If you don't want to do that, to reestablish a different scene, you can just have her maybe complete one exercise inside and then just go to a wide shot outside of the house or the back porch or the front porch or something, and then just basically ignore the transition shot of the door opening and closing and just go outside and establish a wide shot outside. And then she opens the door and walks into your wide shot, and you've gotten her outside. That's a way to do that. Or if you really want to create some intrigue, you could actually avoid the wide shot as a transition And say she's doing stretching inside and she's going to do jump rope outside. You could remember using a close-up or an extreme close-up to get someone from one scene to another as a technique. So theoretically, you could have her finish an exercise inside, and then you could cut to a close-up shot of a jump rope sitting on the driveway. And so that would create intrigue in the viewer's mind, like, what is this jump rope? Maybe someone's going to jump, and then, your mom's hand reaches into the frame and grabs the jump rope and pulls it out of frame. And then you cut to the medium shot of her standing there, takes two hands of the jump rope, starts jumping rope. So you use either a wide shot to get her outside or a close-up shot to get her outside. But what would be common in both the wide shot or that close-up shot is in the previous shot inside, you see your mom wrapping something up. And then in the very first half second of the shot outside, you don't see your mom. So you don't have a jump cut. You've taken us to another scene, and then your mom enters the frame in the new location, and boom, you've transplanted her or transported her location-wise and time-wise. Does that answer your question okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. All right, guys, well, they may kick us off any second here because the weather guys are about to log on for the new newscast. You're doing good work. Again, Sam was really impressed, and I've been impressed with your written stories, and to see you guys moving it forward. You've got some real skill there. So I know Sam recommended that when you write your stories for the web, you read them out loud so that you can hear what they sound like in someone's mind when they read them. And also the bonus of that is for next week, when you start writing for script, which you will narrate, always write your script and read your script out loud, because it sounds out loud different than the way it sounds in your head. And you will have revelations when you say, oh no, I need to flip those two words, just by saying it out loud. So good work so far, and email me any questions, and I will, as soon as I'm able to process it, I'll get the replay of this video up so you can watch if you want to rewatch anything that Meredith said. Thanks again, guys. Be blessed.
Bye. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.